or something is without the awareness that something is. So it's very obvious that really the Sat and the Chit are the same thing really. There is no astitvam, there is no asti, and unless there is also Chit. So in Sat, Chit, both are there. So the first 7 verses talked about the logic for the fact that my presence and my awareness is never gone. Never gone. Never gone means, and in fact another thing is that it is not dependent on anything. As we think it is. So this is what the viveka that the author is asking us to do. This is the viveka. What is the viveka? What is the discrimination? That I think that my presence and my awareness is tied to something. It is dependent on something. It is dependent on my being alive, for one thing, very obvious, that I need to be alive in order to be present and to be awareful. And aliveness means it has its own sub-values. Aliveness means that I should not be, I should be aware. Like for example, supposing I get unconscious because I got a hit, then somehow I feel that my awareness is gone. At least has been struck down. I don't know where it is gone. It comes back up again, hopefully, if I recover from it. But the whole sense of my thinking is that my beingness and my awareness is a product of something else. This is how I think. Whereas in fact, what the author is pointing out is that if you do the analysis from the very beginning of the verse number 1 and so on and so forth, what you find is that the awareness is actually never dependent on anything. It is independent. It is independent. So that's another thing. Another aspect of the dependence and independence is that I feel that my presence and my awareness, that whole topic is about presence and awareness, Sat-Chit, that my presence and awareness is being dependent on other things. It is a product of some other things, like my body being well, my mind being well, and I being alive, my prana also. So it looks like it is dependent on all those kinds of things. Whereas the truth is just the opposite. That the presence and awareness is an independent entity. It is swatasiddha. And so the swatasiddha means that it is self-existent and self-aware. This is a very big thing. In fact, my mind cannot. It doesn't even. I cannot even imagine to think about it. How can it be self-existent and self-aware? So this is the discrimination that I have to develop. That my presence and my awareness is not dependent on anything. In fact, everything else depends on it. That will come later on. But at the moment, we should see that the fact that I am present, that I am and I am aware, is a completely different vastu than the one I am used to thinking. I am really not dependent on anything. I'm self-existing. Anyway, that's one thing. And another thing is that I am unlimited, infinite, Advaitam. And so the question is, how can you prove that? Because, and it is also a byproduct of all my wrong thinking. Because, as I said before, that my thinking is that my presence and my awareness is dependent on things. And therefore I'm limited. I'm circumscribed by some things. And along with that, it means that I am not unlimited. I'm not unlimited because I don't appreciate the self-existence and the self-awareness aspect of it. So it is not until I look into that, in fact, anything which is self-aware, in fact, there is only one thing in the whole creation which is self-aware and self-existent, which is the Chaitanya, which is the sentience which I am. So that sentience, being independent, is also infinite. Infinite. Because to prove that it is finite, you have to make some conditions. But you can never prove that it is infinite, because there is nothing in my whole life where consciousness is not there. Not there at all. So there you can find that, really speaking, you cannot get rid of it. You cannot delimit it. It is no limitations to it. It is infinite. Therefore, self-existence also means it is infinite. Here, in one of the later chapters of Panchadasi, in chapter 16, because chapter 1, as we are studying, is the kind of a summary. It doesn't go into a lot of depth. It is just an overall summary. Later on, each one of these aspects, like Sat and Chit and Ananda and so on, will be dealt with in much more detail. So in the 6th chapter, this topic comes up, where I'll just broaden it. I'm just I'm just expanding on. I have not even tackled the new subject yet. I'm just going to the old Sat and Chit, the first 7 verses that we did. So there were 2 objections to it. So there the same topic here, was the Advaitam. The Advaitam of the Atma. That the Atma is Advaitam, means that it is the only thing, there is nothing else with it. So here the objectioner has two objections. So let's tackle each one of them. One of them, it says, is that you say in the books that this is Advaitam, but I can never experience it. I don't experience Advaitam. And so I don't understand how you can say this is some kind of a utopian vision that I am Advaitam and so on and so forth. It kind of sounds good, but really it is, you cannot experience it. So here so this is what is called Purva Paksha, means that this is an objection from somebody. And the objection can be either from a well-stated viewpoint, who says that we can prove this is Dvaitam, and you say it is Advaitam, and here are our reasons. Or the other objection is, I don't understand how you say it is Advaitam. I am not accusing you, but certainly I don't understand it. So we say, what is it that you don't understand? So the person says, I don't understand that this is Advaitam. It's non-dual. So we say, to that, samadhana means the answer to this objection. Siddhanta, it says this is not true. This is not true that this is Dvaitam. In fact, let's do the other way around. Let's do two things. One is that this is, let's go back to what I said earlier, that the objectioner or the Purva Paksha says, this is not my experience. This is just some theoretical thing on the book, but it's not my experience. And we say, that's not true. In fact, it is your experience. So the person says, how? So this is what is called paroksha versus aparoksha. Paroksha means this is something away from me. It is some written on the books and only the Mahatmas know it. Maybe they don't even know it. They say they know it, but who knows they know it or not. So I have no idea, I have no, you want me to believe it, it's something else, but I don't get it. So it is called paroksha. And you say it is aparoksha. How? So we say, let's listen. In fact, all consciousness, all awareness, and all astitvam, beingness, so the beingness and the awareness can only be aparoksha. It's just the opposite of what you're saying. It's just the opposite. So the person says, how? Because it is in the form of an experience. Everything in the world is your experience. Isn't that what you call aparoksha? And he says, yes, that is what I call aparoksha. So, really speaking, awareness is your experience. Now, you have a wrong conclusion about your experience, that this is Dvaitam. So that's the second part. We'll tackle that later. But the first thing is that it is not paroksha. It is in fact your everyday experience. So the person says, I see that, yeah, okay. And, but then he says, okay, then where is the wrong conclusion? Well, I see this is a paroksha. Yeah, Atma is aparoksha. Aparoksha means it is your own personal experience. In fact, we say, and Swami Maheshananji has really done a marvelous job of pointing this out with the help of the Vidyaranya's exposition, that really every moment of our life, experience is mine. We have different kind of experiences. So we have some experiences which belie me to think that the Atma is limited. That's a different thing altogether. But it is always in the form of experience. Experience. So it is already aparoksha. You cannot say that the consciousness is paroksha. Always aparoksha. This is number one. Now we come to your second point, which is that that it is Advaita. Then we say, listen, don't you see that your consciousness is always there with you? It is never absent. Don't you see that? He says, yes, I do see it. But that doesn't prove that it is Advaita. Because I don't see, so the objectioner says, I don't see the entire cosmos as being Advaita. I only have my experience. But there are other experiences that I don't have that can be there. So you cannot say that this is Advaita, that it is the totality. You cannot say that. So we point out, listen, we can say that. And the reason we can say that is the same way you look at Dvaita. So the person says, what do you mean by that, how I look at Dvaita? So we ask him, you think that in this room there is Dvaita. So he says, yes, this is Dvaita. You are not seeing the whole world as Dvaita. So he says, yes, I am. So we said, no. The reason you don't see the whole world as Dvaita is because you are extrapolating what you are seeing in this room as indicative of your whole experience in life, isn't it? So the person says, yes, that's true. I don't see Dvaitam everywhere. I don't see the whole thing. But we say that you have taken a small sample, and based on that you have come to the conclusion that there is duality. And now wherever you go you feel this is duality, isn't it? You extrapolate it without experiencing total Dvaita. You are extrapolating from a small Dvaita. So he says yes. And we say we do the same thing with Advaita. How? Because once you find that your experience of consciousness is never absent, and it is always in the form of asti and bhati. Astitvam and bhanam means consciousness, never away from you. Therefore, this is enough. You can say that no matter where I will be. You see that? You can now extrapolate your own personal experience into a cosmic experience. Just like you did your personal experience of duality in this room into a cosmic duality, we say that the cosmic the personal non-duality can also be extrapolated into a cosmic non-duality. Beautiful point. Anyway, to summarize the first 7 verses, the author tells us, please analyze your experiences. You find that night time it is the same consciousness, morning it is the same consciousness, outside it is the same consciousness. Don't you see? Are you blind to this fact? Why are you hanging on to some funny ideas? Don't you see the truth of this? Yesterday was the same consciousness, today is the same, next year, all my life, for everybody, forever. It's the same consciousness. Why? Because it is not dependent on anything, it is not made up of any parts, it is independent. So therefore now, we have given you a brief introduction. It is just an introduction to the concept that my existence and my awareness are both infinite and they are my own personal experience, aparoksha. You cannot say this is not my experience. You shouldn't say that. Once you understand this, it is very clear that this is the truth about it. So this was pretty much wrapped up in verse number 7. Now, now we tackle another topic, which is the topic of ananda, joy. Because the astitvam and the existence and awareness is not it is not a inert vastu. It's not like a table. Because when you have a table, some people may like it, some people may not like it. Just like happens in our class also. In our class, we like this table like this. In the HCI class, they don't like this table, they put it on the other side. So every vastu has some likeness and dislikeness. Some people like it, some people... So it does not necessary that everybody likes the same vastu. So the Indian achar is not appreciated by Westerners. They say, what is so funny? Whereas the Indians love it. So everything has some likeness and dislikeness. That is not true for the Atma. So the Atma is the nature of joy for everyone. For everyone. And so that has to be now explored. That topic has to be explored. The Ananda of the Atma. And also it will be proven, just like the Astitvam and the Bhatitvam, the existence and the awareness is infinite and aparoksha. Anandam will also be proven to be infinite and aparoksha. So that is the next topic that we will now take up. So in verse number 8 it says, Iyam Atma Paramanandaha Parama Premaspadam Yataha Manabhuvam Bhuyasam Iti Prema Atmani Ikshate. Okay. So, it says that Iyam means by now the Atma that we were talking about has already been introduced to you. So it becomes this, not that. You see, in the beginning, Atma is always Iyam. But at least as a topic you can start by saying, the self, number 3. So there it was somewhat introduced, it was like a noun. And now it will be a pronoun. Iyam means that same Atma, which is this Atma, is Paramananda. Means that it is the ultimate Ananda. It is the ultimate Ananda. Why is it so? Because you have to provide the logic for it. How can you just simply say it is a Paramananda? Just 1 second, I wanted to say something, see something. And in verse number 9 also, I'll just look it as a block here. Ataha tat, in the second line of verse number 9, Ataha tat param tena paramanandata atmanaha. So the same thing is Paranandaha and Parama. Parama and Para are pretty much the same. The meaning of Parama and Para means the ultimate, the highest. And here Swami Maheshananji gives the example. You say, this is our Parama Acharya. Parama Acharya means this is our highest teacher. Now the highest teacher means that you may have a teacher and that person may have another teacher. Usually it just goes like a couple of different, there's not like 3 levels, only 2 levels. And so for example, when we say Puja Swami Dayanandji when he was alive, so Puja Swami Dayanandji, So he was the Parama Acharya. Above him there was nobody else who was alive. And so here also, so that means he's the ultimate Acharya. And in fact, Swamiji says that in order for the Acharya to be ultimate, he should be alive. Because then it becomes history. You can say he studied under so and so. But Parama Acharya means the ultimate Acharya living today for us. It's called Parama. So that's the meaning of Parama. Parama Ananda means this is the ultimate Ananda. And here the Atma is always alive. There is no question of it never becoming Paramananda. You cannot say in the old days Ananda, Paramananda was very good, but nowadays it's not. No, it's the same Ananda. So then the logic is, how do you say that this is the ultimate Ananda? It says Parama Prema Aspadam Yata, because it gives you the ultimate joy, ultimate sukham. You are very pleased with it. And so here the logic is that we do not love anything that does not give me joy. We only love something if it gives me joy. If it does not give me joy, I don't love it. So here the examples given is that supposing you, and this happens in Indian marriages, you get married and then you develop a love for the person, because it's not a love marriage to begin with like it in the Western. So you just got thrown together by two families. And then you become very familiar, and then you start to like the other person, and you love your spouse. Okay? So the wife, for example, let's take that example, loves the husband. But then the husband starts to mistreat her. And mistreat her means that whatever she cooks, he says, "What is this? Who taught you cooking? This is ridiculous." And then he says that, you're supposed to do this, you didn't do this. It just irritates the heck out of her. How long is the love for the husband going to stay? Not long. So the wife loves the husband because that love gives her some joy. If the husband does not give her joy, she abandons him. She no longer loves him. And the vice versa, the same thing on the husband's side. So that means, interestingly enough, if the Atma were to become a source of sorrow, you will not like the Atma. But it never happens, almost never happens. It happens very rarely, and we'll deal with that in a minute. So the Atma is always the source of your own joy. You abandon the other person for the sake of the Atma. And with very rare exceptions, you do not abandon the Atma for the sake of someone else. So there are some exceptions to this. One is that given a chance, a parent might lose their own life to save a child. So you say, well, this is a contrary to what you said earlier. And on a lesser level, if there is another person that is not related to you, you can occasionally give a life, your own life, for the sake of that person. Very rare, but it's possible. Generally speaking, you would lose a life for your own progeny. So there the answer is that, at least look at both them separately. The progeny is as dear to you as you are to yourself. It's almost like equal. And you also believe that by saving the child, you're doing something very good. So you get a lot of satisfaction out of that. That is also for the self. You will feel guilty if you did not rescue the child and let him die. And you don't like to have that feeling. This is at the highest level. At the lower level also, it is possible that you can actually help someone at the expense of yourself. Like examples given is that if it is in a very extreme cold and you find some old person doesn't have warm clothing, you can take off your jacket and give it to that person and says, please, you have it. So the question is that how can a person be in suffering the pain of cold weather for the sake of someone that you don't even know? Doesn't it violate the self as being the ultimate source? No, it does not. Because you again get a lot of satisfaction that I gave some money to someone or my jacket to someone. There is actually a real case that happened in Rishikesh. So there was the Swami who in Rishikesh it gets very cold. This is someone told us this is a real situation. And so so they have some blankets that they put on, and this rajai and so on. So this person was in a satsang, or maybe he had gone for a meal at the kitchen. When he came back, he found that his blanket was missing. So he asked some chowkidars, have you guys taken it up for dry cleaning or something? What happened? He says, really? He says, I saw a young kid who, finding that your room was unoccupied, I saw him take your blanket and he ran away. So you know what the Swami told the chowkidar? He says, I am very sorry to hear that. So chowkidar says, what do you mean? He says, I think I can find him. He says, try to find him. Tell him that blanket I've had for 15 years. It is dirty. If he's really needing something warm, we can give him a new blanket. Ask him to come back. Just look at this. Very beautiful. So there the Swami was so solicitous of the other person. In fact, he was a very, he had really reached a stage where everybody else's welfare was his welfare. So there are exceptions to this rule, but 99.9999% of it is that you do not abandon your joy. You abandon somebody else's joy. I gave you this example in the first time when we did this, where a woman was wearing this diamond ring that she was so fond of. Her husband had gathered a lot of money and he finally gave her this diamond ring. And so they were sitting in a train and she was flashing her. She was so fond of looking at her diamond ring. This was her big possession. She used to love it. And so this other guy said, lady, take off that diamond ring and give it to me. And so she says, no, I cannot give it to you. This is my most important love. And he says, quick, if you don't do that, I'm going to shoot you. So the husband said, just give it to him. Give it to him. Save your life. And so really speaking, your own life, your own welfare is the most important thing. So therefore, we can say that the Atma is Parananda. Why? Parama Prema Aspadam Yataha. Because it is the source of total joy. If it was not the source of total joy, it will not be most lovingly for you. And in fact, this is what happens. You have some physical problems, and in fact, one of the things that happens is that you do fasting. If you are in a very classic, you're a temple goer and so on, and you now want to save yourself for the next life. So you sacrifice your joy and freedom by fasting this life so that you can get a better life. There also it is proven that it is really ultimately to your own Atma. So therefore, it means that the Atma is the ultimate source of joy. And another thing in the second line it says is, Mana bhuvam hi bhuyasamiti prema atmani ikshate. Everyone says, I hope that I am always there. Nobody wants to die. Here also there is an exception. The exception is, if you are very unhappy, you could commit suicide. That also does not violate the Paramaspadam Yataha. Why? Because a person who commits suicide thinks that this is not the Atma that I want. I think I will be better off someplace else. There also it is, because if you don't care, then it would not matter to you. You will just be crazy. But it matters to you that your future has to be done better. And so you commit suicide so that the present state that you cannot stand can give in place to a future state which is better. So I gave this example also before, that this one person says, I love this girl and she does not reciprocate, so I am just going to go on the top of Qutub Minar and jump from it. And so this person says, no, don't do it. I'm going to try to reach her. He says, we have tried to reach her many times before. She doesn't love me and she's the only person that I love. Life is not worth living. I'm just going to commit suicide. So he starts climbing these stairs. In the meantime, with the advent of the cell phone, his friend is desperately trying to get hold of his girlfriend. Finally, he reaches her. He says, what are you doing? He's ready to commit suicide. She says, no. He says, yes, he's almost on the 3rd level. There's 2 more levels to go and he's then dead. He said, okay, I didn't know he loved me that much. I did like him actually, but tell him that I will marry him. This fellow rushes up and he says, hey, she just called and she said she'll be marrying you. He says, okay, really? Then he comes right down. Bang. He says, thank you. And so there also means that the committing of suicide is also conditional. But the love for... So this is the thing. This is the thing you should see. Just like the astitvam and the bhatitvam, the existence and awareness is unconditional. Ananda, the Atma's Ananda is unconditional. This is an important point to see. Your love for someone else is very conditional. Even your own kids. How many cases are there where the father just says, I never want to see you again? Because when the person was growing up, you were in love with the son, but this fellow has misbehaved to a point that it does not give any joy to the father. And he says, just get out of my life. So the love for anyone, including your own children, is conditional. The love for yourself is unconditional. You measure your love for others with respect to the love for yourself. That is the ultimate goal for you. So therefore, iyam atma paramanandaha paramapremaspadam yataha manabhuvam yihi bhuyasamiti prema atmani ikshate. May I never disappear. May I always be, because I love. This is the source of joy to me. So here, one doubt can be there. Wait a second. If you say that Atma is the ultimate source of joy, then why don't I know it? And why do I go after outside things as though they mean a lot to me? If you're telling me that the Atma is the ultimate source of joy, then I would turn back from the other things and keep looking for my Atma, because I don't know where it is. So it is said, this is because there is a covering of the Atma. This is called avarana. So avarana means a covering. And due to this covering, I am unaware of the fact that I am the very source of joy. Because if somebody were to interview each one of us and say, what are your sources of joy? You know what we will do? We will make a long list of things that are sources of joy for me, but I would not count myself as one of them. You'll say, I love my daughter. She takes such good care of me. I love her. And this neighbor of mine, what a wonderful person that is. So good. Always, I love that person. And by the way, I do love ice cream. Yes, that is something nice. Rasagulla, jalebi, etc. are just wonderful. So I have a long list of things that I love. And then you say, how about yourself? I say, what do you mean? You asked me who I love. You didn't ask me anything about myself. I don't know about me. I'm okay what I am, but I just love the rasgulla and jalebi. That's the main thing. And then you said, do you know that your source of joy is much better than rasgulla and jalebi? I said, really? How? Because rasgulla jalebi means that you cannot eat much. You'll start putting pounds. And then it costs money. And then, and then you cannot eat it all the time, only once in a while. But you have yourself as yourself. And he says, these all things confuse me. I don't understand any of this. So this kind of a confusion is called avarana. Avarana means there is some kind of a covering that prevents me from understanding that I am the very source of the joy itself. And there are two things that have to be done with respect to to correcting this confusion. So one is called an initial introduction to this through someone who is reliable, who is a reliable source, Vedas. So this is what is called, Vividisha. Vividisha means a very intense desire to know, is that so? So the Vedas and all the books that we study and the classes we conduct is all to convince you to start looking at yourself as a source of joy. In fact, there's a very interesting, an important verse that Swami Maheshananji gives. He says, "Tam etam veda anuvachanena brahmanah vividichanti yagyena danena tapasa anashakena." I don't remember from which Upanishad it is given. I've seen it someplace else also. The meaning of this is that the job of Vedanta is to convince you that just like you have rasagullas and jalebi, much more than that, there is an interesting source of joy within yourself, which up to now has been covered up. And see, this covering is an interesting one, because normally the covering is with respect to myself, with respect to other things. Like, supposing there's a play that is starting and there's all these people are assembling on the stage, and there is there's some kind of a cover in the front, and you cannot see anything on behind it. Then when the play starts, the curtains, and then you begin to see. So the curtains are a cover. How can you have a cover to yourself? This is the question. Yes, it is possible, because in the 10th man example, there's a beautiful example. This is why the 10th man example is so important in the annals of Vedanta. In that example, if for some reason you're confused that you did not count yourself as the 10th person, you will be just as ignorant as though there was somebody else. And so even though you are the person who is searching for the 10th person, not realizing that I am the very 10th person, it is kind of like an avarana. You get an avarana, it's some kind of a parda, it's some kind of a covering. It's possible. So two things are necessary for one to discover one's joy. Okay? One is called Vividisha. Vividisha means Veditumicha. Veditumicha means, this is the Sananta, which means just like you have an intense desire for a source of joy outside of you, similarly, it has to be created for you an intense desire for the Atma, and it comes. You study it, and then you begin to say, my goodness, I am seeking things unnecessarily. I'm the very source of joy. And so the intense desire means that you have to be totally convinced of it. And the Vedas have to play a big part, Vedanta has to play a big part in it, teaching has to play a big part of it, you have to play a big part of it. Then Vividisha comes. Just like, it's very interesting if you go to, especially supposing you're a vegetarian, as I am, and uh, you can go to some of these countries where vegetarian food is very hard to get. So if you go to France in particular, I've never been to Spain, but I'm told Spain is also the same way. In Italy, no. Italy has a lot of vegetarian dishes. So you can just take pasta and so on. But eating out in France, not in Paris. Paris also is a difficulty thing, but outside of Paris, vegetarian food is very hard to get. So supposing you're touring, and now all of a sudden you're both Indians and you want dosa, idli dosa. Suddenly your spouse says, wouldn't it be nice if we had Indian? Because we cannot get any French food which is vegetarian. There must be an Indian restaurant which makes dosa. So they says, that is a good idea. We start looking for telephone book or Google and so on and so forth. And you find, yes, there is a South Indian restaurant on the other side of the town. And you were supposed to go someplace else, but you know what you say? You are so desirous of eating. You have not had Indian food for 15 days, eating all this junk, and then you really want to have dosa. This is what is called intense desire. That means that you will do anything. If the Uber costs you $100, you will go $100. My younger son just went, he was just on a tour. He was working very hard, and he was working on some property here and so on. Then finally he finished it, and he says, you know what, I want to take a vacation. And so he and his brother, they both went to the East Coast to play golf at the various places. And then his brother is still working at some other company. He says, I can only take 4 days off. So Manoj said, no, I want to go to England, and I want to play at St. Andrews, which is the very source where the golf took place. So he says, I want to really get there. What the fellow had to do, I cannot believe it. He had to take Uber to the Paddington station, then he got a train to Glasgow, and from there he took... All because he wanted to intensely go and play golf for 4 hours. Crazy. I said, what could you do? He says, no, I wanted to do it. So, Vividisha means a similar intense desire to understand how the self can be a source of joy. And this can only come through some introduction. That's it. Otherwise, you don't know anything. I mean, dosa means you must have had dosas before, and the hunger for it must be there. So this has to be introduced for you, and this is done by the Vedas. This is done by Vedanta. This is number one. Then the avarana will slowly dissolve. And what happens with a lot of study is that every progress you make in life in understanding the Vedanta convinces you, my God, this is right. I have been overlooking a very important source of joy, which is myself. And I am not going to waste time in doing it. This is what happens, I'm telling you. And then the more you study, the more you meditate, the more you are with yourself, without anybody, the more you turn your attention away from rasgullas and dosas and so on and so forth, the more you say, my goodness, the enormity of this life starts to touch you. This is number one. That the second thing that is talked about is called ekagrata. which we will take later on. I think we've already done some of it. Is ekagrata means a singular-minded focus. It's necessary, not easy to do. So this is all introductions. We have to really graduate to a point that first you have to have a vividisha. Then after vividisha, ekagrata. Ekagrata means that you have to singularly focus on the Atma. And at the expense of it, there are a lot of techniques and so on. And until you do, Vividisha will give you enough introduction so that your level of joy will increase in your life. But it won't reach the level that is supposed to until you do ekagrata. There's a very beautiful example given about this. It says that the sun is a very powerful source of heat. We all know that. Designed by Ishvara to be so far away, it really nourishes the whole life and gives us heat. Any heat that you have from local sources also comes from the sun itself. Coal, energy, solar, wind, everything, all the heat from there is from the sun. But important and powerful as it is unable to burn a piece of paper. Just think about it. You have a paper lying outside in the sun, it won't catch fire. Except if you focus the sunlight on this piece of paper with a convex lens, it catches fire. So the same sun has to be deployed in a focused manner. So similarly, the vividisha has to now be deployed in a very skillful manner. And if it is done, then the avarana, which is generally loosened by vividisha, is totally destroyed. Totally destroyed. This is what all the Mahatmas tell us. He says, yes, ekagrata is important. But you cannot accelerate until you prepare yourself. Say for example, if the paper is wet, or if the log of woods is wet, then you cannot set fire to it easily. You first let it dry. So it's all a step-by-step thing. Until your vividisha becomes real vividisha, not fake vividisha. Oh, I'm very interested and so on and so forth. This is what happens sometimes. You find somebody who comes here and says, oh, these classes are good. And after a couple of weeks, then you go to someplace else and say, those classes are even better. And then you don't come back. And I wish them good luck and so on. But vividisha has to be very, very real. It takes a long time. Once you do all of that, you then become intensely desirous of the second stage, which is ekagrata. So anyway, that's how that is done. We've already pretty much done number 9 also. Tat prema atma artham the artham anyatra naivam artha atmani atas tat param tena paramanandata atmana. We've pretty much, I think, done all that. Yeah. Now, in number 10, I want to continue doing this. A couple of other things I wanted to do. So let's, I think the 10 should not take us much longer. So the verse number 10, and we won't have the recitation and so on, just to save time onto this, I want to go on to a complete introduction. So here's, Swami Vidyaranya says that up until now, from your logic, you should determine that the nature of the Atma is Satchidananda. Sat, Chit and Ananda. These are the three aspects of it. One which is always there, one which is always awareful, and one which is the source of joy, which is joyful. Not even a source of joy, that is the joy itself. This is proven from a logic standpoint up until now. That's all we have done. Okay. It turns out that the nature of Brahman, the nature of Ishvara, is also the same, which is Satchidananda. Also the same. This is what Shruti has been saying all the Ishvara is Satchidananda. Now we are saying that the individual, the nature of the individual, not Paramatma, but the Jivatma is basically Satchidananda. So that means that the two are not similar, they are the same. Because similar means there are, this chair is similar to that chair. No. But if you have two different definitions of the same chair, then you may have two different names to it, but the chair remains the same. So the Vastu is only one, which is Satchidananda. This fact has to be proven by Vedanta. You cannot grasp it. You cannot grasp it. And why would you want to grasp it? This is also a question. This is what number 10. He says, okay, I've already figured out I am Satchidananda, then I don't need to understand, I need to bother about Ishvara. Let Ishvara be what they are, and I don't care because I've already found the truth and so on. Hey, I was telling you that one time, I think I may have, I'm sure I've mentioned it to you also, that one time I was invited to this E is equal to MC squared conference on non-duality. And so there is an organization called Organization of Non-Duality. It's called Non-Duality Conference or something like this, some organization. So they asked me to join it and then present a paper, which I did. And at the end of the 2 days, what I found was something very funny. All they were doing was to independent, and they were talking about the same thing, Satchidananda, I am the source of joy, and so on and so forth, so on and so forth, but with one big exception. The word God, Ishvara, Brahman and Paramatma was totally devoid of their vocabulary. Because I actually sat there for a day and a half listening to others. I also talked in one of the seminars, and there were questions to me and so on. And then I was there, I was also sitting to see. Not once did any of the people talk about it. And they are all very serious people and so on and so forth. So the question is, so what's the harm in it? So you meditate and you just feel that I am Satchidananda, and you can just do that and that's all. No, it doesn't work. Why not? Why wouldn't it work? Because until you understand that the rest of the world, both not only you but the rest of the world, is also the same. Ishvara is in fact your creator. And until you inquire into it, you will always have a feeling that I don't care about others, I just want to meditate on my own. You have not fully explored, in other words, the doubts of non-duality. It won't happen. You can fool yourself, you will feel very good, I can do 2 hours of meditation. Somebody says, I want to do 3 hours of meditation, and so forth. That's not the contest we want. Whether you want 3 hours of meditation or 2 hours of meditation. What's the thing when you come out of the meditation? And in fact, Swamiji says here that there are gurus, like for example the entire yoga guru Kapila. They were also not Jivan Muktas, because their understanding of Ishvara was not consistent with what Vedanta says. So it is just paroksha, and it doesn't work. It does not give you the total joy. In fact, what happens is that the total joy comes from completely eliminating your own individuality, as I've said that many times before. In fact, there is only Ishvara, there is no Jiva. This has to be clear. How can you do that without actually starting to understand what the nature of Ishvara is? Because your sense of individuality, individuality means a sense of limitlessness or a limitedness will not go. So therefore, where verse 10 says that you start a logical introduction to yourself, but then you need to be held, your hands have to be held by Shruti, that now says, by the way, that is the nature of Ishvara. And there is no basic difference between you and Ishvara. And you have to say, how is that possible? Because you think of Ishvara as being very big and I am just a small person and so on. Yes, the bigness and smallness are just upadhis, but the very reality of it, what really matters, is the same. So that also has to be understood. And so that's, I think I will stop there. I wanted to do more, but we were somewhat delayed. So now, having at least gotten an introduction to all the 3 elements of the self, which is Sat, Chit and Ananda, then a new topic of what are some of the impediments and how do I overcome those obstacles? That topic will be taken up next, and so we will do that next time. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Questions? All right, good. I'll see you next week.